gas cylinders. So he has a track record of not rolling back any of these measures. A lot of it rides on that confidence. So unless and until we improve our macros, even for foreign investors, they're not going to get confidence in India is not able to address inflation. And because of high inflation, the Reserve Bank of India's hands are tied. They cannot ease interest rates as aggressively as they ought to be, looking at the growth cycle currently that we are in. So I think even for a monetary policy, it becomes very important that fiscal policy both of them need to work in tandem.
Sure.
You can't have deviation over a period of time.
Right. I will soon be taking questions from the floor, and but before that, if I can just give an opportunity to Swami for a brief closing remark.
The final wind-up is first that the budget is just one little part of a very much larger, broader program of accelerating growth and bringing down inflation, of which other things have to be done. In particular, there are a whole lot of business rules. I mean, India is not an easy place for doing business. It comes 134th out of 183 countries. So there's a huge number of things to be done. Now, that's where the reform process is important, as much for Indian investment as it is for any foreign investors. So if we have a situation now, bit by bit, okay, let me be blunt. A large number of those very difficult rules were really put in order to be able to get kickbacks. With this huge uproar about corruption, actually a lot of that can no longer be sustained. We are going to get a cleaner set of things in which we'll also have to simplify the rules. Right now the government is going in considerable detail day after day on how do we improve the rules for increasing coal production, for increasing the ability for outsiders somehow to get into private sector to get into coal production, how do we get into expediting environmental clearance, the expansion of roads in forest areas. So on a series of these things, changing those small rules is something that has finally become a priority. That, to my mind, is going to be more important than many of these big ticket issues that come out in speeches. But at the end of it all, in the nitty-gritty, how much easier is it going to be to invest? The positive news there is this is recognized, and I said not from a point of view of foreign investment. So many Indians are saying, I would rather invest in Brazil than invest in India. So the need to focus on cleaning up your act and accelerating growth, that they are finally attending to, I find that an encouraging sign, and without that, the budget by itself will not achieve much.
Right. Now I throw the discussion open for audience questions.
The budget is like a kind of a forward statement. But how, in your analysis of past budgets, how relevant have you seen it to be as far as the execution went?
I think there have been deviations between what is projected and what is achieved. You can say that particularly on the expenditure side of the budget, and the main item being subsidies. Typically we have seen the arithmetic on subsidies deviating far significantly. But this time round, why we do believe that there is an achievement possible on subsidies is it's being backed by actions like a cash transfer of subsidy. It is on a pilot basis, likely to get extended. The second is the diesel repricing every month. I think, unless and until you see action backing a number, there is a credibility issue there. So, yes, there have been a lot of targets on disinvestment, and many a times we have underachieved on disinvestments. But if government is very serious in its resolve, for instance, if it is targeted of 55,000 crore on disinvestment this year, and if it starts well early in the fiscal year, starting April to June quarter, I think there would be some, sense of belief that, yes, the government is trying to. So you have to marry the actions with the numbers.
And with that, I would like to thank all the panelists on this macro panel for their time. Thank you.
Yes, I found it very interesting. It was very insightful, and the distinguished guests and all that were all very informative. They were very forthcoming, and I think it gave us a very clear perspective of how it will affect our Singapore investors probably.
Purely from a regional investor's perspective, how do you think the budget fares?
India's fourth largest private sector bank providing superior interest rates. and the finest banking experience for NRIs. Your support inspires us to do better. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Contact Yes Bank today. Integrity is being unafraid.
Then am I to believe that your central government is using technicalities to save the same private companies who you are up in arms
Just
against?
asking the straight question.
Sir, you're avoiding my question on action on terror groups, which actually was my key question.
And not settling for a less than a straight answer.
No, don't qualify.
You could have entered the procedure of investigation.
What is this code?
Now coming to
Integrity
Read the code. Was Adarsh
is using the power of the word.
Was Devasys so frivolous? Was CWG
Emphatically.
Whose side is the central government on?
Distinctly.
Do you have a choice? When was the last
Incisively.
time that the BJP conducted an internal inquiry to give its president the clean check?
In the direction of
So now that
truth.
he's going to be there in the saddle for another 4 years, what does it mean for Pakistan and therefore for us?
With a clear conscience. Journalism of integrity on the News Hour, India's most watched news show. India's fourth largest private sector bank, providing superior interest rates and the finest banking experience for NRIs. Your support inspires us to do better. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Contact Yes Bank today. LIC, India's largest life insurer with 350 million customers and assets of $241 billion, is now in Singapore. LIC has set up a wholly owned subsidiary in Singapore. LIC Singapore offers innovative products to suit every need. LIC is the biggest and most trusted insurance brand in India. And now we are in Singapore for life.
A budget scoring high on marks and ending with the lesson that India remains a very difficult place for doing business as far as Indian industry houses are concerned, by their own submission. So maybe let's start from that and look at what the budget could have done, what the budget has actually done, and what it might have left behind for future thoughts. And if I could kind of begin with Dudley on my left, and I assume that the left will come up with the right view for once. Dudley, we are here sitting in Southeast Asia, in Asia Pacific. We don't expect India's finance minister to prepare a budget keeping the Asia Pacific in mind. It would be unfair on his part. It would not be a rational expectation. But having said that, when Mr. Chidambaram goes into preparation of a budget, or for that matter, any finance minister today from a country like India does prepare a budget, he would of course have a global perspective in his mind. And from a global perspective, the most important stakeholder would be the investors. And there's very little point in denying that India's connection with the Asia Pacific and the rest of the region have enlarged to an extent that Asia Pacific investors are particularly keen on looking at India, simply because there are many factors which seduce foreign investors, and India surely has one of those factors going for it, which is a very large market with around 400 million middle class. Now, from that point of view, and purely from a regional investor's perspective, how do you think the budget fares? Are you okay with a 7.5% on a 10 rating?
I believe that the budget for India was a good budget, but if I look at it from an investor's point of view, although there are some fantastic capital projects there, the Delhi-Mumbai corridor, prospect of building 8 new cities, creating industrial parks, if I was looking to invest, I would be concerned because of the global fiscal cliffs, because of money is tight and short. So what is there for me to be convinced that I should invest in India? Although I can see the opportunities, I know the government is trying to do certain things to make the economy more attractive. But what I would have liked to have seen is something different for the government, from the government, to encourage me to look away from places like Myanmar, to either keep my money here in Singapore, make it attractive to me to come into India. And that's what I believe was missing.
Thanks, Dudley. And Gagan, if I could now turn to you. We heard this in the first panel that a considerable chunk of foreign investors interested in India are actually Indian politicians round-tripping their money. Now, netting away these round-trippers, there would still be a small community of genuine investors interested genuinely in India as a place providing long-term future returns. Now, from their point of view, are fiscal measures announced in the budget in terms of the tax benefits and the rest of the clarifications, would you call this a satisfactory budget?
So I guess just for the benefit of all, I think the previous panel did give a very high marks to this budget, and clearly from an overall economics perspective and overall politics of the budget, it was good. Clearly from a finance minister's perspective, the fiscal consolidation, the deficit issues, what he has done is great. But when I look at, and this budget is supposed to be an Asia Pacific impact, so I want to look at it from a foreign investor's perspective. And to my mind, I think there is lots which has been left undone. For example, when the finance minister started his speech, he said that I'm at pains to state over and over again that India at present juncture does not have the choice between welcoming and spurning foreign investment. Very good. It gives me a lot of happiness, and I could feel that something is coming. And then when he announced about the tax laws, his statement was clarity in tax laws, a stable tax regime, a non-adversarial tax administration, and goes on. So clearly that is very important, and while I was hearing the budget speech, I was thinking it will really bring a lot of benefits and clarity. But I'm sorry to say, at the end, whether you look at the general anti-avoidance, which was being talked about in the previous panel, in January, Finance Minister had actually given a press release and talked about acceptance of various recommendations of SHOAM committee. So the expectations was that in this budget, most of them will find the way, but there is no discussion about grandfathering. Yes, I'm happy that the GAR has been deferred up to April 1, 2015, but the question is, what about grandfathering?
Yeah, I think if we shift the focus onto the Indian public sector, there's a way of getting another angle into it, and Mr. Kadiresan heads one of the largest Indian public sector organizations, the Life Insurance Corporation, working out of Singapore. So how do you look at this budget? You have been here, you have been looking at business while being based in Singapore, Indian business while being based in Singapore, and let me also add to this the fact that this is a budget which allows banks to act as insurance brokers. So how do you look at this picture in a totality?
In the totality, I would feel that it's as Dr. Swami described it, it's a good budget under the conditions. It's inclusive. It has taken care of the international rating agencies. And the point regarding tax residency, I think the government had said they will take care of the concerns after some apprehensions were raised. But there are few things I thought it makes very good sense that talking about bringing a shift in the domestic savings from commodity like gold to more growth-driven financial instruments. Government has taken a call, and they have the finance minister has announced that LIC will open offices in places where a population of 10,000 is there. That will make us more visible, vibrant, and we will have tremendous footprints across the country. That will create visible savings in terms of monetizing. And another thing that is said is modernizing the post office. Banks all the banks will have ATMs. All these measures surely would spur domestic savings. Then infrastructure. talking about infrastructure, the Golden Quadrilateral has been a big game changer as far as infrastructure in India is concerned. And it has been proved that wherever this Golden Quadrilateral moved, the roads, they have been a catalyst for developing the surrounding rural areas. It has been a great sense of, it has brought in prosperity. Now with the Delhi-Mumbai infrastructure corridor, industrial corridor, then you have the Mumbai Bangalore and Bangalore-Chennai. So in one shot, when all these things are connected, you will find that right from north to south is fully connected. Not only connected, it brings prosperity. It's a catalyst for developing the entire countryside across, talking about 7 mega townships. Mega townships in the sense much bigger than Navi Mumbai. That's been planned. So you will see on one side it is the Bay of Bengal, the port, then you have the Arabian Sea, both connected, passing through. If it's a question of Chennai, Bengaluru, it will pass through Andhra Pradesh, the backward districts of Nellore, Chittoor, all these things get connected. So it is going to be a harbinger of change. These are some things which the government has picked up from the success that the Golden Quadrilateral brought about.
Thanks, Dudley. And Gagan, before we take the questions from the floor, one of the interesting measures, and which could actually turn out to be a far-reaching measure in the long run, is the Minister's decision to set up a Tax Administration Reforms Commission. What would you expect this commission to do? What are the mandates that, let's say from your position as a tax specialist and a professional, what would you want this commission to handle?
I mean, just one thing, actually reform, bring clarity, bring certainty. And because you're asking this question, I will again pinpoint another, like one word was used somewhere saying ping pong. What government has also done in this budget is that they have suddenly said all buybacks from India will be taxable. And I want to bring this point here because in 1999, when the finance minister presented his speech, he said that I propose to amend the law to put it beyond doubt that on buyback of shares, the shareholder will not be subject to dividend tax and would only be liable to capital gains tax. And this was the statement made by the finance minister in the parliament on the house, 1999. This is the statement he made in 1999. The GAR recommendations when they came, in that also one of the recommendation was let the foreign investor decide whether they want to do dividend or they want to do buyback. Let them decide. Fair enough. But suddenly we see that now the buybacks have been made taxable. So the question is, I think foreign investors are very clear. If you are taxing us, no problem. And I think, yes, there are few foreign investors who would not want to pay tax, but foreign investors are clear. You're taxing us, no problem. But give us clarity. If we know it is taxable, we'll hedge it or we will put it there. But yes, clarity, and I think this Tax Reforms Commission, if they can give clarity, certainty, taxable, not taxable is not the point. Whether or not there is clarity and certainty is the key question here. And as per the finance minister's speech this time, he wants to make a non-adversarial environment. Hopefully next couple of years it will be much easier for foreign investors.
It will actually give me an insight, okay, that for example, we can help the SMEs who would like to invest in India. That would be very useful from what I have heard inside, that can give them a perspective of how you can invest into India with now the new budget that has just been released.
There's also this expectation from the budget to do n number of things to solve practically every problem that India has, which obviously is not possible because there's already a the white paper on black money. There was a slip in the expression, which wasn't intentional. But beyond that white paper on the black money, which remains more or less a white paper till now, yet to become grey, probably the budget couldn't have done much.
India's fourth largest private sector bank providing superior interest rates. and the finest banking experience for NRIs. Your support inspires us to do better. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Contact Yes Bank today. LIC, India's largest life insurer with 350 million customers and assets of $241 billion is now in Singapore. LIC has set up a wholly owned subsidiary in Singapore. LIC Singapore offers innovative products to suit every need. LIC is the biggest and most trusted insurance brand in India. And now we are in Singapore for life. Integrity is being unafraid.
Then am I to believe that your central government is using technicalities to save the same private companies who you are up in arms
Just
against?
asking the straight question.
Sir, you're avoiding my question on action on terror groups, which actually was my key question.
And not settling for a less than a straight answer.
No, don't qualify.
You could have entered the procedure of investigation.
What is this code?
Now coming to
Integrity
Read the code. Was Adarsh
is using the power of the word.
Was Devasys frivolous? Was CWG
Emphatically.
frivolous? Whose side is the central government on?
Distinctly.
Do you have a choice? When was the last
Incisively.
time that the BJP conducted an internal inquiry to give its president the clean check?
In the direction of
So
truth.
now that he's going to be there in the saddle for another 4 years, what does it mean for Pakistan and therefore for us?
With a clear conscience. Journalism of integrity on the News Hour, India's most watched news show. LIC, India's largest life insurer with 350 million customers and assets of $241 billion is now in Singapore. LIC has set up a wholly owned subsidiary in Singapore. LIC Singapore offers innovative products to suit every need. LIC is the biggest and most trusted insurance brand in India. And now we are in Singapore for life. For the last 5 years, the biggest names, the most controversial personalities have opened up first to Arnab Goswami.
कई लोग कह रहे हैं that the BJP has lost the election even before it has started.
Country will have to decide whether we want to support vote bank politics or development politics.
What about your role as a nationalist? I don't have any national ambition for myself. I want India to be the superpower in the world.
You fear for your life, what happens to you, your family, you've settled, Ms. Bhutto. You're willing to unsettle yourself once again.
I'm not settled, you know. Every day the phone call rings, you never know what bad news is coming. It's going to be a tough call to say that I'm not going to play anymore.
Why will it be a tough
Because that is what I've done throughout my life.
मेरा सिर्फ इतना ही कहना है कि ये आपके टीआरपी के लिए ज्यादा नाटक मत करना।
नहीं तो
मैं तो देख लूंगा फिर।
देख लेने की मतलब क्या है?
वो देखेंगे आप आगे। नहीं बात ऐसी है। Of course ये threat है तो threat पकड़ लीजिए।
Frankly Speaking with Arnab Goswami on Times Now Weekends. 5 years, #1. India's 4th largest private sector bank providing superior interest rates and the finest banking experience for NRIs. Your support inspires us to do better. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Contact Yes Bank today.
So on clarity and certainty, that's the final call that we take from Gagan, and it's now my pleasure to open up the floor to the questions. We stick to the rules that were there in the earlier session. Do identify yourself and specify the panelist you want to ask your question to. Yes, sir, please.
I need your views on the missing real estate regulator in India. Today consumers are suffering, whether it's a A grade builder or a C grade builder. Across India, builders take the consumer for task. They take money, they don't refund. There is no real estate regulator. Besides, so much of demand is there. Besides this, is it because of the black money of politicians which is there in the real estate sector, or something else? I want to...
Are you wondering about the absence of a real estate regulator? You want a regulator to be there in India? Okay.
Yeah, I need an...
We'll have the panel coming in on this. Mr. Kadariasan, any thoughts on a real estate regulator in India?
So far none. We have a body known as CREDAI, but that's a informal kind of a setup, but doesn't really
But I think what our friend wants to know is that do we actually need such a body? Are we in the process of setting up something like that?
Nothing in the near future as far as I know, but then there is a dire need to have such a thing because of the notorious delays and possibly defaults that have happened in the construction sector. There is a crying need to have this, as well as about land holding, ownership, title verification, all those things.
Well, maybe one thought is that, you know, whenever we talk about problems in India, we tend to think that regulators will solve all the problems. We have had regulators. Regulators have had their own problems themselves, so the problems have not necessarily gone away. Maybe the old ones have been replaced by the new ones. But, well, on that note, the next question, please. Yes, sir.
Address on the macro level, the corruption thing, if the black money thing about a couple of years back, a lot of things were going on, whether it will be coming back and some policy will be coming up. But the minister, as of now, was totally silent in this budget. And how much confidence, because once if corruption is hold on or put a break, somewhere down the line, the policy and governance will be strong and indirectly will be giving a lot of confidence and faith to the, particularly to the foreign investors.
Gagan, would you like to take a shot at that?
Actually, I'm a tax professional. I don't go into corruption. But having said that,
not directly, you mean?
I think it's something which has not been addressed clearly, and I don't see it to be going away so soon. Yes, it's a game which has to be played over the years, and I think, as has been said by the previous panel, not my comment, there is too much of embedded politicians and whatever black money there, which is round-tripped or whatever. No comments from my side on that. But I would clearly say that yes, something needs to be done. Strong measures need to be brought in, which have not been done. So from my perspective, yes, there was nothing, zero in there.
If I would add to that, probably there's also this expectation from the budget to do many number of things to solve practically every problem that India has, which obviously is not possible. Because there's already a black paper, the white paper on black money. There was a slip in the expression, which wasn't intentional. But beyond that white paper on the black money, which remains more or less a white paper till now, yet to become grey, probably the budget couldn't have done much. And this was a follow-up from the earlier budget last year.
If I could perhaps just add to that, I think one of the problems is the British left you a very bureaucratic structure, and I'm not guilty for that, but I hope, because I'm rather outnumbered here today. But I think one of the things that has to happen is, and has happened in the UK and is happening slowly around the world, I think the civil service and the structures that are used need to be modernised. Therefore, things like transparency, accountability, which obviously everybody needs for all sorts of public money, can actually then be measured, and then you can start to cut down on certain black economy issues and under the table money. And I think once that starts, which the budget is not really there to address, maybe that's something that the Congress will think about and bring in papers over the next year or so before the next election to show that, you know, we are very keen, we're open for business, and I think that would be very attractive to foreign investors.
Thirdly, we might need the British to show us the way again on that. I see two hands, and these two have to be the two last questions because we have 3 minutes left. I'm so sorry. I'll go by the distance. The furthest one first, please. Yes, sir.
Good evening, the panel. I'm Ron Tan from Singapore. I have two quick questions. One is, how does the Indian budget benefit Singapore? The second question is, what is the debt, Indian debt against the ratio against GDP? Thank you.
Well, how does the Indian budget benefit Singapore? Maybe, Gagan?
India budget benefits Singapore. I think the India-Singapore treaty anyways benefits Singapore. That's on one aspect, which is a very broad tax level aspect. But otherwise the relation, which is social or political relation between the two countries, is very high. The comprehensive economic cooperation agreement signed between Singapore and India has increased trade manifold. The relationship is at all-time high, and I think the investors from Singapore are going more and more towards India. In the last, I have been in the profession for 19 years. But in the last 4 years, what I have seen in terms of trade flows between India and Singapore has increased tremendously because of that confidence through SICA or other measures which the governments have done. On the second question.
On the second question, I don't know if Mr. Kadresan or Dudley would have a number to say. I mean, my guess is that the Indian debt GDP ratio is pretty high, but almost 90% of it is actually internal debt. So the exact number, Shubda, you might have a guess?
Somewhere around 58. Even I have to
58, but I am sure the economic survey, which is placed before the budget and available on the same website as the Indian budget, would give you the right answer. On that note, I have the pleasure of drawing this